Okay everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're back on GT Sport and we're back with round 1 of the new exhibition season. It's season number 2 in the FIA Nations Championship. So first round, driving the Alfa Romeo 4C, so it was a Group 4 race at the very short Miobi track. Obviously everyone pretty much going for the Alfa Romeo 4C. I had done very little practice for this, to be fair. I did the track guide, that's pretty much. It was about 15 to 20 minutes in time trial, and then I just went straight into this race. I did, I think, two laps just warming up in time trial. I didn't do any practice for the race. So going into this race, I think a lot of people were in a very similar situation where they just went into this race and didn't really know what was going to happen for strategy. Some good drivers in this lobby. I tried to do a bit more competitive split. It was an 8 PM race. I thought it would be a higher rated lobby, but still only just over 2,200 points for the win. So it does seem like there's a lot of luck with the lobbies that you pick, because I watched Ticheney's stream, and their 9 PM race, which is normally less competitive than the 8, actually had more points available than the 8 PM race. So it's just so random, these races recently, whether you get high split lobby or not. It's a lot of luck, but unfortunately not a massively high rated lobby, but still not bad, you know, just under 2,300 points for the win, still not bad. So some solid points available. So for this round 1, obviously what you want to do is put some solid points on the table. I'm obviously starting P3, so not a bad qualifying. It was quite lucky, to be fair, because I just couldn't get a lap, and I actually destroyed someone's qualifying lap coming out of the pits. Whoever that was, I apologise. I tried to get out, I seen him coming late, went to stay on the inside, realised he was going on the inside, then tried to go out to the outside, and he did the exact same thing, and we just collided. But it's a horrible pit exit here, so it was going to be a quite hard session, but I managed to get one lap in right towards the end of the session and put myself up to P3 with not particularly the best lap, but still luckily starting towards the front of the grid. And that's what you want at this track, because the field spread on this track was going to be a massive issue. You know, such a short lap, but because it's such a fast-paced track, by the time the leaders were halfway around the lap, the other drivers were only just going through turn 1, so it's quite a big difference, as you see, starting the race. I'm going to stay on board with the action on board for the first lap, as we're right behind P2 and just trying to stay in the slipstream straight away, not making any massive errors at the start. Obviously GTA Matty there at the front of the grid, one of the GTA drivers, a very fast sim racing driver from other games as well. You may have seen him on a set of course from other games, and just trying to stay with him, these drivers at the start. Obviously I didn't know what to expect, as P2 has a massive error, and I had to kind of get out the throttle mid corner, which is really dangerous because the rear can just go on you. Just got away with it, and didn't lose a massive amount of time. A little bit of time lost, but not a great deal. As going through that corner, trying to be aggressive, nearly went a little bit too aggressive. He puts his hazards on there. You'll see a little flick of the hazards to say sorry for his mistake, which is all good. That's what you like to see, when someone acknowledges they made a mistake and they just put the hazard on. They don't need to do anything other than that, you know, just acknowledge they make a mistake, and that's nice to see. As going through that corner, you see me going a little bit sideways as I was really pushing at the start. I had no idea what the strategy was. I half expected this to be a pit stop race, but that soon wasn't the case. Obviously, as most people will have known who drove last night's race, I went into this race expecting we were going to pit on lap 12 or 13. I didn't know how these tyres were going to hold up, but again, going through that corner, you can see getting a little bit sideways and getting a little bit scruffy at the start, putting a little bit of wear on these tyres I really didn't want to do at the start of the race. You can see sliding through that turn 1 on the second lap, and also then losing control of the rear towards the end of the lap. So picked up a penalty also there. It was only a 4/10 penalty where I ran over the curb, but that was going to get pretty much gone by the time we're midway through the track, because I think turn 1 actually gets rid of some of the penalty without you even actually, you know, lifting. So it just seems like an issue on certain corners on certain tracks where you can get rid of a penalty without even trying to. But now you can see getting put under pressure a bit by P4, and there's a bit of a gap developed to P2, so I need to settle back into a rhythm and try and pick up that slipstream of P2 and put him under some pressure to see if I can get up to P2 in this race. Obviously, I do not want to let GTA Matty pull too far away. He's a very consistent driver. He's not going to make too many mistakes, so I need to just try and put this P2 driver under pressure and then see if I can make any gains on P1. I wasn't really expecting much from this race, to be fair, though. Went into this race just basically just for a fun upload, just to get an upload done, as we're going to ride on board now. And starting to catch P2 up a bit, and actually starting to drop RC Snake there in P4. So actually pulling away from P4, and I kind of didn't expect that. I expected them to be put under a lot of pressure from the cars behind, but actually I'm pulling away now and actually caught back up to P2. So this is quite good to see. As you see, going through turn 1, you can see the penalty there on just over 2/10 already, so I've already got rid of it. You see, going through the corner, it just goes by itself without you even trying to get rid of it. So it's one of them corners. I think it's a similar thing to Red Bull Ring in the braking zone, where it just goes. They kind of need to look at that, because I mean, if I would have had about a 2-second penalty, I could have just got rid of it all through the race without even trying. It would have just gone all by itself. But you can see P1 around 2 seconds ahead, P2 in front of me. I'm obviously running in that dirty air at the moment, so losing a little bit of downforce, and obviously that's going to affect the tyres. But I felt pretty comfortable riding behind him. It didn't feel like I was having to push too hard to stay with him. I felt reasonably comfortable in the position I'm in right now, and actually doing a fairly good job. Quite surprising to see it completely dropped pretty much P3 now. They're starting to get segregated from this battle for the lead. It's looking like a freeway battle now, as P2 has a big moment on that grass. That's a corner that can catch anyone out there as you run a little bit wide. I've done it many a time before. You know, it's just such a hard corner to master. And again, going through that final corner, he nearly lost it, P2. I managed to go around the outside and pick up that P2. So a mistake by P2, gifting myself the P2 position. And now I've got to just try. You see GTA Matty over 2 seconds ahead. So now I've just got to concentrate. Obviously, I've got P3 still right behind me though, in that slipstream, and he's going to be putting me under pressure. So I've got to keep an eye on the mirror, drive a little bit defensive in some regards, and just try and keep the pace up to stay with GTA Matty. This is developing in quite an interesting race, to be fair. I didn't know what to expect in this race. I didn't know if it was going to be a crash fest. I didn't know whether it was going to be a massive slipstream track. The slipstream didn't seem that strong, to be fair. I think obviously because it's a lot of fast corners, there's not really a straight where the slipstream is going to affect you too much. In general, the slipstream kind of harmed you. I think it would have been best to be running in clean air. As soon as I got past P2, I found my car was a little bit easier to drive. I could actually go through the corners a little bit better. And you can see now that P3 is actually not really making any gains, just staying around 3-4 tenths behind. The slipstream just doesn't really have an effect here, and that's quite interesting, because obviously a lot of people expected this to be a slipstream track. It just didn't really work out that way, because you tended to lose too much time right behind someone in terms of downforce. And obviously the really fast turn 1, you wanted to be in clear air for there to give yourself maximum front end grip, as you see myself down into 4th gear, lifting off the throttle and just letting it coast through that corner, and then hard on the throttle again, on the power nice and early, using all the width of the track. Run a little bit wide there. You can see P3 getting a little bit close, having a little look on the right side, but there's no real overtaking opportunity there. And also another advantage of being ahead now through these corners is I've got a clear view of the track. When I was right behind that the P2 driver, it was quite hard to hook up them corners, because you couldn't, from the view I use obviously, I couldn't see the apex of the corners and when to turn in. But now I've got a clear track, so I can just drive my own race, and it's really a hard track to overtake on. You can see P3 now really struggling to make any sort of gains in anywhere. He's having a look on the inside, but then I just take a different line. I found that my lines were very different to P3. You can see it on the replay cameras going through turn 1 and also going through the final section. Now, this final group of corners, you'll see we take very different lines through here. You can see he takes a kind of a wider line into that corner, and then also on this now I swing it into this corner much more than he does. You can see it on the replays. I'll try and point it out when we go to the replay camera. You'll see that I really swing the car in there, where he takes kind of a tighter line in. It's different styles that work out differently, obviously, as now we're coming up to halfway through this race already. Such a fast-paced race. Obviously the laps just go by. I mean, when I looked, I didn't even realise it was coming up to halfway through the race. GTA Matty obviously got that lead up to about 2.5 seconds, so doing a great job. Obviously he's just running in clean air, not having to worry about anyone behind him. I've got to do a little bit of concentration on the mirror at the moment. I was hoping that if I could break the slipstream from P3, I could then maybe push and see if I could gain on GTA Matty. But GTA Matty was driving pretty much a perfect race in this race. He was making no errors. You can see him up ahead. He's just constantly pumping in them laps and driving really consistently. But now I'm actually starting to get in a position where I'm starting to pull away a little bit from P3. I'm taking different lines through there. You see I go wide and then go to the apex much later than P3. And you might be able to see it on this angle in a minute now as we come through to the last sector. these corners as well, you can see the difference when you're obviously running right behind someone. It's harder to see the turning points, but you'll see going through this corner now how we take different lines through here. You might see it as we go through this. I really swing the car in, you see it there, and then chuck it into the second part where he's a little bit smoother, but it's just different styles of how we attack the course. And it was really interesting to watch it back and see different approaches to different corners. You see how I use a lot more of the track on the width to widen the line in. He takes a narrower line in, then runs out a little bit and then has to lift off the throttle, whereas I'm on the throttle at that point. So I'm actually pulling away, but then he's obviously picking up the slipstream again. And I could see this happening in my mirror, so I was thinking, if I can get close to breaking this slipstream, I think I can actually pull away from this driver in P3. As again, getting very close to running on the grass. He actually does that a lot better than myself there. Stayed on the throttle. I had to back out a little bit just in case I ran wide and lost control of the car, because it's such a tricky corner that. And again, on the exit, I seem to be getting better exits from that corner than P3, and this is really quite an entertaining race. I actually enjoyed this race, although I wasn't really looking forward to this race going into it. I actually think it was quite an entertaining race to be involved with, and it's actually quite good that it was quite close between myself and P3 at this point in the race. And obviously P1 only a couple of seconds up the road, and it's going to be a real tactical battle, you know, pushing the limits to see if we can gain on P1. Obviously it's such a hard track to gain because it's such a short lap. You're only going to gain like a tenth or so, or you know, it's really interesting to see the delta. I was constantly paying attention to the delta to P1, noticing that once I got a bit of a gap to P3, as you can see now, have a little look there, you can see he's starting to drop back from myself, P3, and now I can actually concentrate on some racing lines. I've actually pegged that gap at around 2.4 seconds to P1, and we're pretty much on it at this stage. Started getting a bit of a rhythm going on the track, obviously not warming up and not really practicing it. When you get to this stage of the race, you start feeling the rhythm and start getting used to it. So this was the point where I started to feel like I was hooking the corners up a bit, as you see, starting to get close to breaking the slipstream of P3, and this is good because then if I can do that, and then I can just concentrate on the race and trying to push forward to see if I can put GTA Matty under some pressure. You can see P3 dropping back to nearly 8-9 tenths of a second, but then he's getting this little bit of a slipstream down the straight. But then again, going through turn 1, am I able to do that better line through there? I took a really tight line, actually stayed on the curb there, and that actually enabled me to stay on the power quite well all the way through the corner. I actually got the gap to 1 second, but then on the exit he's got a little bit closer. But now going through this corner, the P3 makes an error. He's on the grass and he just lost control of the car. He hits the barrier, probably picking up some damage there, and that has meant that I'm completely away now. You can see my car into the distance, and now I've not got to worry about P3 attacking myself. So now the gap to GTA Matty, you can see how I've actually brought it down to about 2.2 seconds. Gained about 3/10 on it in the last 6 or 7 laps, where I've actually had a bit of a gap behind me so I could concentrate on the track. But I was a little bit worried about how hard I had pushed these tyres, because I had expected this to be a pit stop race. But then when I saw GTA Matty staying out and just keep driving, I was thinking, I think I might have made an error in terms of how hard I pushed these tyres at the start. Obviously driving overly aggressive, but then driving aggressive has actually got me to where I am now in this race in P2 and in a comfortable position. But making a little error there, you could see running wide onto the grass. That was the first real sign that the tyre wear was starting to kick in with the understeer through that fast corner. And then again on the exit there, the rear started to twitch around a little bit, just about managed to hold on to it and keep on the throttle, and still just 2.2 seconds behind GTA Matty. This is actually a really interesting part of the race, because we've been pretty much identically paced since lap 1, because I think it was lap 2 we were 2 seconds behind him, and now we're just 2.2 seconds behind him 17 laps later. So this has been a real good battle, and I'm just trying to keep GTA Matty honest in this race, make him push as hard as he can. You never know, people can make mistakes in races. I could see that obviously we've got 7 laps to go. 2.3 seconds is a lot. That is a big gap to make up in such a short lap. You know, it's only a 39-second lap, so I'm going to need GTA Matty to make some sort of error in one of these laps if I'm going to really be able to get in the slipstream somewhere. But I thought I'm going to keep pushing until I feel that it's not worth it, or the car starts feeling too risky, because once the car started getting a little bit risky, I thought it's not really going to be worth you know, making any risky moves or risky driving, because you can see P3 is now over 5 seconds behind. I've got a comfortable gap to P3. I'm driving very well, keeping it nice and clean, and actually keeping GTA Matty really honest at this stage. He's only 2.2 seconds ahead. Very evenly paced so far in this race. We've been both driving really well and keeping it really clean, and just trying our best to not make an error. You know, it's not an easy track to drive flat out when these tyres are getting as worn as they are. You can see the front left, rear left starting to get a lot of wear now, and this long right hand corner is really taking its toll on the tyres. It's starting to affect the grip through there. I could feel the understeer building, and even through these corners then it was starting to affect the second part where you chuck it in now, trying to carry maximum speed and running. This really did, I think this was the point where I started to think I might have to start taking it a little bit easier now. You can see the gap, obviously, with that mistake building up to about 2.5 seconds. And then as I chuck it into this corner, the rear starts to go a little bit funny again. A little moment on the power where it started to go a little bit loose. So I thought I'm going to stay with it for a bit, but if it carries on feeling a little bit too risky, I felt I'm going to have to start backing out of this in a bit, because I don't want to lose this P2. I've got a 5.4 second lead to P3. One mistake and that could be gone. We've seen what happened to P3. He actually ended up down in P6 after that. I think there was no P6 or P7, I think it is, he's in after that one mistake. So it shows you a little mistake can be very costly at a track like this, such a fast-paced track, because it's such a high speed that you're constantly going. One error where you drop down to second gear or something can lose you massive amount of time. So again, a massive moment mid-corner there where that rear left-hand tyre was starting to cause me a little bit of issues, and I think this is the point where I thought that's enough now. I'm not going to push anymore. I thought I'm going to just take this position. You'll see starting to drop off, you see, all the way down to 93 miles per hour through it, just trying to be fairly smooth and not make any errors now. I didn't want to risk anything, and especially through this fast corners I thought I'm not going to risk going flat out through here now. So I think I actually dipped down to 4th gear. You'll see there, yeah, down to 4th gear, backing off completely and just playing it safe now. You know, I can lose over 2 seconds, well, pretty much a second and a half a lap and still come second. So no point risking anything, trying to be really gentle through here. You can see the rear starting to go a little bit loose again, but just making sure I don't push it too hard. And obviously GTA Matty kept on it. Congratulations to him. He drove an absolutely perfect race and just kept on it to the end. Obviously he was in the rhythm, but I felt from my point of view it wasn't worth doing what I was doing. I was managing to hold. I think we both had very similar pace, but I felt if I carried on driving like that, there was a chance of a mistake coming in and a costly one. So I just started taking it easy, especially through this section down into 4th gear. I didn't want to risk going on that grass with the tyres worn and then ending up in the wall at the end of the corner and losing P2. So just being, you know, thinking of the long run, just trying to get some solid points for round 1. You can see 1 lap to go now as we go over the line. Gaps come down to P3 by about a second, but you know, that's what I knew was happening. This is why I always say, you know, you've got to just think about consistency. If you don't need to push, there was no need for me to do it because I wasn't gaining enough on P1. So I could have drove, you know, the perfect laps, been driving really well, got the gap to 2 seconds, which wouldn't have been enough anyway, and then made a mistake and ended up in P5. So always think about the long game. That's my advice. Obviously, you can see driving fairly smooth now, and just thinking of picking up P2. There was no point me risking it. And we're coming through to the final corners. A really fun race. I enjoyed that race with GT Matty. I pushed him as hard as I could up to about lap 22, 23, and then I gave up. I thought I'm not risking that anymore, especially after them very near misses where we ran wide. And we come home in 2nd place and a really fun race and quite comfortably ahead of P3 and 4, etc. So a great race by GTA Matty, well driven to him. He kept on it right to the end, and congratulations on that. You know, sometimes when you're in the lead and you're in that position, it is advisable to do that because obviously you're in the rhythm, you don't want to just get out of it. Sometimes if you lift off when you're in P1, you start making mistakes, but I felt for myself in P2 I had a comfortable gap to obviously P3. There was just no point me pushing 100%. So P2, some solid points, just over 2,000 points I think it was, 2,076 points. So not an amazing result, but obviously round 1, solid points on there, and I think we're actually P13 in the Nations Championship after that round. So quite a fun race. I actually enjoyed that more than I expected to, and I hope you enjoyed that. It was good fun. Great racing all the way to the end. Anyway, thanks again for watching this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already subscribed. Obviously click that notification button so you don't miss any future videos, and we will be back with the FIA manufacturers race tomorrow. Hopefully that'll be uploaded, and possibly doing some streams either today or tomorrow as well. Thanks again for watching, everyone.